right now, at this very moment. You are living by rules you never chose. Your fears, the things that make you anxious at 2 a.m, the way you react when someone criticizes you, the voice in your head that says you are not enough, or that you are better than everyone else. The invisible ceiling you have placed on your own ambitions. You did not choose any of this. It was handed to you by your parents, by your school, by the people who hurt you, by the culture that surrounded you before you were old enough to question it, by every experience that happened to you before you had the wisdom to understand what was happening. Most people live their entire lives inside this borrowed identity, never realizing that what they call themselves is actually a collection of other people's voices, fears, and unfinished business. But 2,000 years ago, a man who ruled the most powerful empire in human history sat alone at night, after commanding armies, governing millions of people and carrying the weight of an entire civilization. And he wrote something in his private journal that no one was ever meant to read. He wrote it for himself, as a reminder, as a daily practice of becoming. What Marcus Aurelius discovered, and what we will explore over the next 22 minutes, is that the identity you are given is not the identity you are condemned to keep. You can, at any moment, choose to begin again, not from scratch, but from truth. This is day 1 of 30, and I want to start at the only place that matters, not with habits, not with morning routines, not with productivity. I want to start with the question Marcus Aurelius returned to every single day of his life. Who exactly are you? Here is something no one tells you when you are growing up. The mind you are using right now to understand the world, to judge situations, to form opinions, to decide what is possible for you, that mind was built by other people. Before you were 7 years old, you had already absorbed the most important beliefs you would ever hold, about whether the world is safe or dangerous, about whether you are worthy of love, about whether effort leads to reward, or whether life is simply something that happens to you. You absorbed these beliefs the way you absorbed language, not by choosing them, but by breathing them in from the people around you. A father who worked endlessly and was never satisfied gave you a belief about what success feels like, that it is always just out of reach. A mother who worried constantly gave you a relationship with uncertainty. A teacher who humiliated you in front of your class planted a seed of fear about being seen. A culture that valued wealth over wisdom quietly taught you what to spend your life chasing. None of this was done with cruelty. Most of it was done with love, or with simple human imperfection. But the effect is the same. You are, in large part, the accumulated opinions of people who are themselves operating on borrowed beliefs. Confine yourself to the present. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He was born into the Roman aristocracy, a world of extraordinary privilege and extraordinary pressure. From the moment he could think, he was being shaped to be an emperor, to carry dignity, to perform strength, to present a certain face to the world. And yet, when he sat alone at night and wrote in the journal we now call the Meditations, he stripped all of that away. He wrote to himself as a man trying to remember something essential, something beneath all the roles he had been assigned. In one passage, he writes, and I want you to hear this slowly, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. This is not a motivational quote for a gym poster. This is a man who has spent years excavating himself, trying to locate where his true self ends and the inherited self begins. Because here is what Marcus discovered. There is a version of you that exists beneath all the conditioning, beneath the fear, beneath the performance, beneath the identity that was handed to you. The Stoics called it the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, the part of you that can observe your own thoughts without being enslaved by them, the part that can choose even when everything else feels automatic. Most people never find it, not because it is hidden, but because they have never been taught to look. That is what the next 30 days are about. You are not your conditioning. You are the awareness that can observe your conditioning. And from that awareness, that witness position, you can begin to choose who you want to become. Let me tell you something about Marcus Aurelius that most people do not know. He did not want to be emperor. When the Emperor Hadrian chose him as a successor, when Marcus was just a teenager, he reportedly wept. Not from joy, from the weight of what was being placed on him. He had spent his life studying philosophy, reading Epictetus, learning how to be inwardly free. And now, the most demanding external role in the world was being forced upon him. For the rest of his life, across 19 years of ruling the Roman Empire, fighting border wars, dealing with plague, managing corrupt advisors, and watching his own children die, Marcus would return to the same private practice every single morning and every single evening. He would sit with himself, and he would ask himself hard questions. We know this because the Meditations, his private journal, is essentially a record of those questions. He is not writing great philosophical treatises for posterity. He is writing reminders to himself, corrections, challenges, a mirror held up to his own face. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Meditations, one of his most consistent practices, was what modern Stoic scholars call the evening review. But I want to describe it here as the mirror exercise, because that is what it truly is. Every night, Marcus would mentally review his day, not to congratulate himself, not to beat himself up, but to observe, to witness, to ask, where did I act from fear today? Where did I seek approval instead of doing what was right? Where did I react automatically, from the inherited self, instead of choosing deliberately from my values? This practice, done consistently over decades, is how a man who was surrounded by luxury, power, flattery, and the temptation of absolute authority managed to remain, by all historical accounts, genuinely good. Not perfect, he would have laughed at the word, but genuinely trying, genuinely awake to himself. Now I want to ask you something uncomfortable. When did you last look at yourself with that kind of honesty? Not the social media version of yourself, not the version you present to your family, your colleagues, your friends, not the version you defend in arguments, the actual version, the one that exists in the silence between thoughts, the one that knows, without anyone telling it, exactly where it has been compromising, avoiding, performing. Most of us spend enormous energy managing how we appear to others. We spend almost none examining who we actually are. Marcus Aurelius reversed this ratio entirely. And it is what made him extraordinary. Here is the uncomfortable truth at the center of Stoicism. You cannot improve a self you refuse to see clearly, the mirror exercise, looking at yourself without flinching, without excuse, without the narrative your ego immediately supplies, is the beginning of everything. It is the foundation that everything else in this 30-day series will be built upon. You cannot master your emotions if you do not know which emotions are actually yours, and which were placed in you by fear or childhood or culture. You cannot develop discipline if you do not understand the difference between what you genuinely value and what you have been told to value. You cannot become free if you do not first acknowledge the specific ways in which you are not. There is a concept at the heart of Marcus Aurelius's philosophy that I want to give you today, not just to understand intellectually, but to feel. He called it the inner citadel. Imagine a fortress, not made of stone and iron, made of something stronger than that, made of your capacity to observe, to choose, to respond rather than simply react. The world outside the fortress is chaotic. People will betray you, plans will fail, bodies get sick, empires, even the greatest ones, eventually fall. Marcus watched all of this happen in real time, at scale, every day of his reign. But inside the citadel, there is always stillness, because inside the citadel is the only thing in the universe that is entirely, irrevocably yours. Your judgment, your response, your choice of how to interpret what happens to you. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. Meditations. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Now here is what makes the inner citadel relevant to the question of identity we started with. Most people's sense of self is entirely built on the outside of the fortress. It is built on reputation, what others think of them. On achievement, what they have done or accumulated. On roles. I'm a father, a professional, a success, a failure. On appearance, on status, on the validation loop of other people's approval. All of this is outside the citadel walls, which means, and this is the terrifying implication, that most people's entire sense of who they are can be destroyed by events they do not control. Lose the job and the identity collapses. End the relationship and the self fractures. Face humiliation in public, and the person who was there before suddenly seems to vanish. Marcus Aurelius watched some of Rome's greatest men go through exactly this. Powerful men who, when fortune turned against them, had nothing left to stand on because they had built everything outside the walls. He was determined not to make the same mistake. Your true self is not what you have done, what you own, or what others think of you. Your true self is the quality of attention and intention you bring to each moment. This, and only this, is yours. This, and only this, cannot be taken. This is not passive philosophy. It is not resignation. It is the most radical act of ownership imaginable. Because once you stop locating your identity in external things, once you move inside the citadel, you become, for the first time, genuinely free. Free to act from values rather than fear. Free to give without needing return. Free to fail without shattering. Free to be genuinely kind without performing kindness. Free to be ambitious without being enslaved by ambition. This is what Marcus was practicing every morning when he picked up his stylus and began to write. He was returning home, to the citadel, to the self beneath the role, to the part of him that no emperor, no plague, no betrayal, and no personal loss could ever reach. So how do you actually begin to rebuild? Marcus Aurelius didn't offer one dramatic transformation moment. He didn't believe in those. He believed in something far less glamorous and far more powerful. Daily return. Every single morning, he returned to his values, not because he had already mastered them. The meditations make clear he often felt he had failed, but because the return itself was the practice. The return was the identity, not the man who never struggles. The man who keeps returning. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. Marcus Aurelius. Meditations. Book 2. Notice what he is doing here. He is not pretending the world will be easy. He is not performing optimism. He is preparing himself, with clear eyes, to engage with difficult reality from a place of inner steadiness. That is Stoic identity. Not a fixed thing you achieve, a practice you return to. For the next 30 days, that is what we are going to do together, day by day, concept by concept, practice by practice. We are going to work through the entire Stoic curriculum, from Marcus Aurelius, from Epictetus, from Seneca, and we are going to apply it to the actual life you are living. Not ancient Roman life. Your life, with your specific pressures, your specific fears, your specific relationships and ambitions and losses. By day 30, you will not be the same person who is watching this video right now. Not because you will have received some external transformation, but because you will have begun the daily practice of returning to the citadel. And each return will leave you a little more yourself, a little less borrowed, a little more true. The identity audit, separating what is yours from what was given tonight. Before you sleep, take a piece of paper and divide it into 2 columns. This exercise takes 5 minutes. Its effects will last the rest of your life. Column 1. What I believe about myself. Write quickly. Don't think too hard. Write the first things that come. I am not good with money. I'm bad at relationships. I am smarter than most people. I am not creative. Whatever surfaces, write it. Column 2. Where did this come from? For each belief in column 1, ask honestly, whose voice is this? A parent? A teacher? A failed experience? Culture? Did you choose this belief, or did it choose you? Circle anything that is not yours. Any belief that originated outside you, that you absorbed rather than consciously adopted. You don't need to change it tonight. Just see it. Recognition is the beginning. You have spent today looking at the self that was handed to you. Tomorrow, we go deeper, into the single idea that Epictetus, born into slavery, used to become the most psychologically free man in Rome. It is the idea that separates people who suffer endlessly from people who suffer and then become stronger. It is called the dichotomy of control. And once you truly understand it, you will never again feel helpless in any situation. Ever. At the bottom of the page, write one sentence. The part of me that can observe these beliefs is not limited by them. Read it once. Then put the paper somewhere you will see it tomorrow morning. You have spent today looking at the self that was handed to you. Tomorrow, we go deeper, into the single idea that Epictetus, born into slavery, used to become the most psychologically free man in Rome. It is the idea that separates people who suffer endlessly from people who suffer and then become stronger. It is called the dichotomy of control. And once you truly understand it, you will never again feel helpless in any situation, ever.